Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert, and welcome back to the Father Joe Grimaldi Podcast. The Father Joe Podcast, proudly supported by our good friends at Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, the home of the Father Joe Grimaldi Star Treatment, serving southeastern Lower Michigan customers for 50 years. That's 3 generations of McInerney's, following founder Houghton McInerney's mission to provide the customer with the best service possible, and that's why so many of Star's customers are on their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Star Lincoln luxury vehicle like me. I'm on Star Lincoln MKC number 4. Summer savings spectacular going on right now. And the only thing hotter than these temperatures are the savings. Check out the summer savings on the stunning 2020 Lincoln Aviator, the all-new Lincoln Nautilus, the Lincoln MKC, and the must-have Lincoln Navigator. They treasure your time and your business. Stop on by and say hi. Houghton McInerney Star Lincoln 12 Mile Road and Telegraph in Southfield, home of the Star Treatment. Always great to have the nice people listening, eh?
Oh, yes, and I'm glad to be here, too.
All right, we're going to check in real quickly with Father Joe Grimaldi. Life is good, yes?
It is. It has been.
You had a hip replacement. We can tell people that, right?
Oh, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, well, I never know.
And you know,
you have to realize,
the hip is...
occasionally you poke the bear here, and he gets all... He points at me.
The hip is...
Yeah, you can't see it, folks, but he points at me like, what were you thinking with that? Anyway, hip replacement, what?
It was May 20th.
May 20th, all right,
Yeah,
but all is well. And you went downtown Detroit to our river walk.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday, and you did 3.5 miles.
Correct, yeah.
And then you had a little lunch.
Correct.
At Eastern Market.
Yeah, a place called Vivio's. I had never heard of it before.
Well,
but it was interesting.
Perhaps he'll be a proud new sponsor of the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
Who knows? It was right next to a fish market, but okay.
But you couldn't, well, get the name next time.
Okay.
All right, so you're getting back in shape, because I know you love to walk.
I do, but I don't know what getting back in shape means.
Well,
it's going to take me a long time.
Cardiovascular is important at our age, so...
Our age, my age. You're a kid.
With that said, congratulations on your nice walk yesterday. I came across, I think I've told you before, I love parables.
Well, Jesus would love you.
Well, I wish that every gospel could be a parable.
Okay.
I mean, is there something wrong with me to want that?
No, I think that's great.
All right. Today's parable, I'm going to let you explain it.
What did you think of it?
I loved it. Real quickly, the last line, the takeaway, so the last will be first, and the first will be last.
Uh-huh.
And now you can take it from there, because the story goes about a vineyard or a farm, whatever the case may be.
Well, I think it goes against the grain of American justice. Could you imagine being the last person hired in the day and getting the same amount of money for a salary as the person who showed up the first thing in the morning? And this is what the parable is, obviously. You know, you had people that showed up at 5, and then you had in the morning, and then people that showed up at 10. I don't know if the exact times, and then again noon, and again 5, and again. And they all got the same amount of money. So Jesus saw the people angry. How could you do this? Well, as I say, even for Americans, it goes against their sense of justice. How could Jesus do this? So Jesus turns to them, are you upset because of my generosity? It's my money, and I can do whatever I want with it. But basically, when you look at that parable, I think you have to try to figure out and try to understand, we all do, try to understand what the Lord was getting at. And maybe one take on that is that, we are alive listening for Jesus' call. He calls some people very early in life, let's say at baptism. He calls others when they're grown up, getting ready for marriage. He calls others when they're ready for having children. He calls people that are in their late afternoon of life, when they're getting to point of retirement. And then he calls people, even calls people who are in God's waiting room, late in the day. You know, people are in their 80s and 90s or whatever the case might be. So he can call us at any time. It's up to you and me to make a positive response. And we respond in a couple of ways, not just so much in keeping the rules of Catholicism, but also he tries to make us understand, and if we listen carefully, we might find out, what is my mission at this point of my life? Because as we grow older, our mission in life changes. And so we try to figure out, what does the Lord want me to do at this time? Now, it's sad when people feel they're helpless because they're old, and nobody is ever helpless. There are people that can teach us lessons even if they can't walk, and they're 120, and they teach us lessons in patience. They teach us lessons in smiling at others instead of being grumpy and grouchy. I mean, there's all sorts of ways they can teach us, and so that they do have something to offer, and that may be their mission. So the mission in life changes according to our age and where we are at that time.
So I start off life as a good guy.
Yes.
And I stay a good guy.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I continue that theme throughout. I'm the guy that shows up for God's vineyard at 6 a.m., ready to go to work.
Terrific.
Happy to go to work because I need the money to support my family.
Right.
As the day goes on, I see other people filtering in.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden, it's getting close to 5 o'clock.
Right.
And I go, well, almost quitting time, another hour. And I see a couple of other people show up.
Right.
The end of the day, when it comes to who's going to make it through the pearly gates, I'm the last one in. Because the last becomes the first. What did I do wrong?
Well, what about looking at it the other way?
Okay.
The first can be last, the last can be first. It doesn't matter. The reward is based on the response to God's call. It's not based on the number of hours that you worked. And so this is what I think, anyway, is the parable is about, is because it seems like, as I said at the beginning, it's almost goes against our grain that the Lord should be able to give that amount of money to the first and to the last. But it's his money. He can do what he wants with it.
And that's what he says in the parable.
Right. And he's generous. Yeah. He's loving. So he wants you to respond to his call. Now, even if we respond at 5 o'clock, or if you want to put it more in a realistic, not a metaphor, whatever, so the person is at the point of death, and he responds wholeheartedly, well, the Lord can accept him and love him. You know?
But I'll tell you this, that at work, that happens all the time. Why did he get the promotion? Why does she get so much money? I mean, that's why I find this parable so easy to interpret. You follow what I'm saying? I don't think you do.
No, I do follow, but I don't think it's related. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think it is, because I think that when people hear it, they naturally try and put it into a personal situation.
Sure.
So they think about their job. Maybe it's in a shop, maybe it's in an office building, maybe it's at a radio station. Everybody sort of watches everybody else and sees how well everybody else does. And at the end of the day, for some reason, people are always curious about how the other person is compensated based on their work style and ethic And you can't help but measure yourself against that person or those people. And you say, I outwork them. I should be getting more. They shouldn't be getting more. That's what I take from the parable in terms of understanding it.
Yeah.
So my big boss, who in this case would be God, let's say his name is Steve, Steve says, it's not your money. It's not your radio station. It's mine. And this is how I elect to do it. I've been a good employee. How come I don't get what they get? I know it took me a while to get there, but that's how I see it.
Okay.
What do you have to say?
I think parables are really strictly spiritual. They have nothing to do with everyday life, as you're saying it. So basically, the parable really has to do, I think, with the idea of how do you answer to God's call. And some people answer it as a child. Some people answer it right at their deathbed. And in either case, as long as you answer the call, your reward will be acceptance by the Lord. Now, I know that you could easily, that's why I said at the beginning, it's unnerving because it goes against the American sense of justice that a boss should be able to give this much money to the person that shows up at 6 a.m. and give the same amount to the person who shows up at 5 in the evening. Well, that's up to the boss. He's got the money to do it, and he does it either way. He's generous, that's all.
I find it, boy, we could go back and forth on this because
sure.
I don't think people can take it any other way but say that there's some sort of a system in life that says the harder you work, the better you will do. The more you apply yourself, starting at a very young age, a parent saying to a child, apply yourself, you will do better at the end of the year. We are told to strive for better grades. We are told to work hard on a regular basis from as early as we can remember.
Sure.
This parable sort of goes against that for some reason for me.
Okay.
That's all I got in my tank. It just sort of says you can do just enough at the very end to make it.
Well, how do you relate it to the spiritual life?
I think I've all... Well, that's a selfish question.
No.
It is. I mean...
Well, because that's why he said it. That's why he meant it.
It's tough for me to imagine that I'm not going to get my just reward because I've done nothing but be a good person, but I've worked very hard at being a good person.
But he is giving you a just reward.
How do I know that?
Well, because...
I won't know until I get to the other side.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
But by the same token, the parable is telling us that as long as we answer the call, he will embrace us. And if the call comes at baptism, it's fine. But if it comes at the deathbed, it's still fine because he's there to receive us. Now, I know that sounds, well, why should the guy who lived such a horrible life all of his life, and now he's dying, and he makes an act of contrition.
Keep going.
And the Lord accepts him and loves him.
Yes.
Well, that's up to the Lord to do that.
All right. So that sort of goes with that whole born again. You know, you hear about people finding Jesus.
Yeah.
Bob was born again. Ladies and gentlemen, we haven't seen Bob in here before, but he's been born again. You know, because there's something in it for Bob to be born again.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that's in the parable. But in the parable, I can see where it would be confusing, as it was for me, to totally walk away understanding what it was supposed to mean.
Yeah.
But now I do because of you.
I'm just one person. I don't know if I can say
No.
I have the only answer. But to me, that's what, if Jesus is trying to get across a spiritual point to farmers, and he's trying to let them know that the Lord is a generous Lord, and he loves them. And the thing is this, that even if they decide to turn to him, to the Lord, even at the deathbed, he will embrace them just as much as he would embrace the person who turns to him at the beginning of his or her life and then lives out that good life until death. So that seems to be where the sense of justice gets people angry, because why should this guy, who was a real terrible person in his life, all of a sudden, before he dies, makes a conversion? And why should he be all of a sudden loved and accepted? I think I can relate this a little bit to one of the subjects we recently talked about, where the person said the minimal requirement of getting into heaven was being born and raised a Catholic and then receiving communion whenever I would go to a church, but not necessarily being a, someone who goes to church on a regular basis and so on. Well, those are just physical actions. They don't know what's in the heart. So if that person was born and raised a Catholic and then does away with his faith for a while and then decides to convert and come back to Jesus, well, we have to accept that Jesus will accept them and love them.
I find people listening right now probably saying somewhere in that parable is jealousy. So let's go there for a second.
Sure.
What do you think about jealousy? Some people, by the way, are more jealous than others.
Oh, yeah.
By nature.
And you know what I always...
by situations, okay?
Yeah, what I always tell them, we just don't know what's in somebody else's heart. And if you were to list all of your personal blessings, I suspect that you would find that you're much more blessed than the person that you're jealous of, okay? Just because they have this air about them that look like they're on top of the world and they look like they're living the life of Riley and so on and so forth. We don't know what's in that person's heart. He may be suffering this wretched, torn apart heart that you don't want any part of. But all you see is the exterior. We don't know what's in that other person's heart.
I'll give you an example. I went up north. I saw homes that I'll never own.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, who lives there? How did they do it? How did they get this magnificent place on the lake that they can come and totally recharge? So I was jealous of that person. But you're telling me, don't be, because inside that house may be one miserable human being.
Exactly. Because we don't know. A person could put on a beautiful act, and he may have what we think are all the best things in life. And we forget what we have. We may have a love that that person doesn't have, a love of a husband and wife that that person doesn't have.
That's a great point.
So it's the house is physical. Everybody goes through ups and downs in life. Financially, you never know what's going to happen. You may be on top of the world financially today. Tomorrow you may not be. But at the same time...
Riding high in April, shot down in May.
You got it.
Yeah.
But you look at where you live, other people are jealous of you.
Yeah.
They have nothing.
Yeah.
And they're jealous of what you have. Now, again, the thing is this, they should count their own blessings and forget about other people, because we really don't know what other people are thinking or loving, or what do they have in their hearts or in their minds and so on, because we don't know it. But we do know what we have. However, we forget it so easily. It's like all that glitters is not gold, as they used to say.
Okay, Mr. Midas here. All of a sudden, he's no longer a father.
But the thing is this, you don't know what the other people are going through.
That's true.
And so this is the one that we forget so easily. I mean, I forget what I have. I'm blessed in so many ways. Not money, but I have other things that other people don't have. I say, hey, you got it made. Look at these others. But what I'm saying is simply this, that it's not up to me to judge anybody, because we don't know what anybody has in his or her heart.
Right.
And it's up to us I always tell people, look, sit down some afternoon, write down all of the things that you are blessed with. Look at them carefully. You don't have to show them to anyone. After you finish writing them down, you could throw them away if you want. And then try to figure out what these other people have that you think is so great. You know, the house, the ambiance, the way they live their life, going out every night to drinks and dinner and all of this other stuff. Try to compare, and you'll find that you're probably much ahead of the game than the other people. What they have is superficial. What you have is solid inside of us.
You know, there was a sunrise yesterday morning that I took a picture of, and I just wanted to freeze it because it just screamed, basically, God.
Yeah.
It was like, wow. Me looking out, the temperature, the beauty. It's like you kind of go, oh yeah, there's a God.
But that didn't stop you from looking at this other person's house and saying, oh, I wish I had that house.
And it did not.
He probably never noticed the sunrise.
Here's the segue. It did not say that to me when I was on I-75 going, get in the right lane, will ya? It's 75 in this zone. What if I brought in another priest right now and he sat down and did 2 minutes? And when we all wrapped it up, what am I getting for this?
That's
nothing.
right.
A whole lot of nothing. Well, I think we had some fun with that one.
But I think we do have fun, and I think that's the important
That's the beauty
thing.
of the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ken Calvert. I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
I look forward to it as well. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.